Good morning and welcome to the Fundamentals of English Language and Literature Teaching, which is paper number 10 of semester 3 of MA English part 2. In this video, we are going to talk about the direct method under the approaches and methods of unit 3. The direct method, also called as DM, is an immediate reaction to the grammar translation method GTM. Severe criticism of grammar translation method at the hands of critics and linguists made people think of a new method that could enable learners to speak English better. It's an idea which provides a revolutionary way of teaching a foreign language or a second language. As the name suggests, the direct method believes in teaching English directly. Teaching English directly means teaching English without the assistance of the mother tongue. Hence, it is also called as the natural method because it believes in teaching a second language as the first language is taught or learned. This is the natural way of learning a language, and direct method immediately appealed to the entire world of English language teaching. It was officially accepted in France, Germany, Denmark, and England. The seeds of direct method are in the European reform movement in the last 2 decades of the 19th century, but the chief exponents of this method are Henry Sweet and Otto Jespersen. This method is built around the belief that foreign language can be taught without translation. The German scholar F. Frank says that language could be best taught by using it actively in the classroom rather than using analytical procedures that focus on explanation of grammar rules in classroom teaching. The direct method is based on the concrete theoretical assumptions. As the grammar translation method was criticized as a method without theory, the direct method is a reaction to grammar translation method and is bound to come out with a concrete theory at its foundation. The theory of the direct method relies on the beliefs that learning happens best when foreign words and ideas or the concepts that it conveys gets linked together via a direct bond. And the proficient user of one's mother tongue, L1, possesses an unerring language sense which both incorporates and surpasses the grammars and the dictionaries of the language. Number 3, the language sense rests on direct associations between experience and expressions. The exposure to the spoken form of the language and the emphasis on speaking before writing are the most important theoretical principles of the direct method. Even in reading, a link is established between the spoken and the written words. A direct association between the target language words, phrases, objects, and actions, with the ultimate aim of the direct method was to develop the ability among the learners to think in the target language and hence develop listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills among the learners is the most important emphasis. The grammar translation method failed to achieve the results in relation to spoken aspect of the language. So, it was immediately discarded and was replaced by its antithesis, the direct method, which believed in the real nature of language, that it is primarily spoken rather than written. Talking about the reform movement, it was founded on 3 principles. Number 1, the primacy of speech. Number 2, the use of text to teach the language. Number 3, the priority of oral methodology in the classroom. Henry Sweet is the founder of the direct method, which is a direct offshoot of the reform movement. Otto Jespersen emphasized the use of contextualized learning methods. The basic principle of the direct method is the belief that the only way to learn a language is to follow the natural order of the basic skills of language acquisition, that is, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, LSRW. It firmly believes in not only translation at any point in the classroom is to be discarded. Some of the important principles of the direct method could be discussed as: number 1, language is primarily spoken than written. Number 2, repetition is essential if association has to be formed and reinforced. Number 3, memory depends on repetition, but attention and interest as well. The teaching materials, namely texts, dictionaries, and grammar, should be interrelated and coordinated to make learning very effective. The formal teaching of grammar should be done only after the learners have intuitively absorbed it from the texts. And it should be only at the sentence level and not at the word level. The translation from and into mother tongue can be unhelpful or rather harmful in many cases. It should be resorted to only when the other means fail to work. The teaching of grammar should follow and not precede the learning of a language, and it should be done inductively. So, grammar is taught inductively with a number of examples to a small interactive classroom, with the emphasis on the day to day vocabulary and sentences and oral communication skills to be built up in a carefully graded progression organized around question and answers between the teachers and the learners are the important principles of the direct method. The direct method demands hard efforts on the part of the teachers. As it does not allow the use of mother tongue in the classroom, it becomes a challenge for the teachers rather to teach a new language to the learners. Its primary aim is to teach the language and not the content of it. The practices in a general direct method class can be included as following. Not using the mother tongue in the class unless it is extremely essential. Focus on listening and speaking rather than reading and writing. The teaching of grammar inductively and not deductively. Using objects, actions, gestures to convey the meaning of the words and phrases. Forming direct bond between ideas and expressions. Focusing sentences as the speech units rather than the words. Providing more opportunities for the learner's participation in the learning process. Initially, the mistakes can be ignored and the students are promoted for speaking. Due emphasis is given on the pronunciation. Use of teachers' creativity and innovations to facilitate the speaking instead of relying on the textbooks only. Extensive listening and imitation to make forms automatic. Teachers, while practicing the direct method, should bear certain points in mind. It's a method that advises the teachers to have faith and not to grow impatient. As acquisition is a slow process, direct method believes that its results would be better with the passage of the time. The teachers are advised to follow a particular code which is presented in the slide in a direct method class. Never explain, but act. Never make a speech, but ask questions. Never imitate mistakes, but always correct. Never speak in single words, learn to use in sentences. Never speak too much, make students speak. Never use books, use your lesson plan. Never go too fast, keep to the pace of the students. Never go too slow, speak normally. Never speak too quickly, speak naturally. And never be impatient, always take it easy. These are the guidelines that are to be borne in mind while the direct method is implemented in the classroom. The techniques of the direct method could be discussed as following. The learners read out the sections of a passage or a play or a dialogue loudly. The teacher uses pictures, gestures, or other means to explain the same. No translation is encouraged at any point of time. No use of mother tongue or ML is observed in the classroom. Learners are encouraged to think in English and communicate in English. Learners should ask questions and give answers only and only in English. No explicit teaching of grammar has been observed in a direct method class. Exercises like fill in the blanks, questions, objective questions are discussed in English. The teacher reads out a passage and learners write it down. Dictation of words, sentences, and passages are given. Vocabulary is emphasized over grammar. Situations and functions and topics are made more interesting. Pronunciation and oral communication are given emphasis, and testing of more oral skills, listening skills, and a little of writing skills has been observed in a direct method class. The strengths of the direct method could be discussed as because it is a reaction to the grammar translation method, it attracted the attention of the world and it had a concrete theoretical foundation. It was based on the acquisition of language in natural order. It was enthusiastically accepted all across the world because it has certain strengths. Like it believes in teaching English as its natural order demands. It does not undertake the deductive grammar teaching, and thus focus is on the objective of the language learning or the learning to speak. Vocabulary is taught with the help of objects and actions that give the exact meaning, and no translation at any level is encouraged. It demands much use of teaching aids which help for longer retention of the items that are learned. Actions and gestures are easy to remember and make language learning process highly interesting. It can act as the immediate motivation for the students as well. It brings the learners at the center of the language learning process. Pronunciation is focused in this method, and pronunciation cannot be neglected in the language learning for the learners. However, the direct method also has got a few drawbacks. The direct method was extremely popular during the first quarter of the 20th century as it was a remedy for the horrors of grammar translation method. But only after a few years of its implementation, people started finding problems with this method. Some of the major weaknesses of the direct method can be as following. It is next to impossible to resort strictly to the direct method. The teacher has to performing verbal gymnastics to convey the meaning of the words when translation can be a more efficient technique. A lot of skilled teachers are required to teach using this method. It is not possible to provide such trained teachers in all the schools across the country. It demands highly competent teachers willing to spend a great deal of time and energy on each lesson for results which were not always worth effort. It is impractical, expensive, and time consuming method because it requires a lot of planning, preparation, and aids in the classroom. It tries to expose the learners directly to the target language without caring for any element of comprehension in the learner. It may lead the learners to the disinterestedness, and they may give up attending the classes as well as a result. The direct method requires a systematic and extensive evaluation, which is time consuming and a tedious job for the teachers. Moreover, it needs more people to carry out the required activities. The teachers should be highly talented, or many a times in a direct method class, the teacher ends up as a joker in a circus, performing various activities where the learners are confused, trying to identify what the teacher is trying to explain. The direct method was enthusiastically welcomed by the world, but its impact did not last longer. Its limitations forced the linguists to think of some other useful theory of language learning. The direct method was a step to assimilate language learning and acquisition together. The theory of direct method was a theory of natural acquisition, but it demands high expectations that the world could not comply with them except for a few schools. Though the direct method could not establish itself completely, its influence remained on the later methods and approaches of language teaching. The principle that speaking precedes writing established itself and formed the basis of other methods and approaches to come in the near future. The direct method, if applied with utmost care with all its principle to a small classroom, will definitely produce very good results, if not the best results. It has the potential to be a very useful way of language learning. Thank you very much for being a part of this video which discussed the principles and practices of the direct method. Stay tuned for the next videos.